welcome back to Tina Butty Podcast. I'm Erica.
And I'm Dominic.
And today we're going to talk about the British class system.
The British class system, or the history of it.
The history of the British class system. Yeah. What is the class system,
what
basically?
Is it?
And does it exist in America?
Well, yeah. And I mean, does it exist in America? That's the question, isn't it? Because, I mean, the lines are a little bit more blurred over here. I mean, there's people who say it doesn't, and there's people who say it does. Mm-hmm. And there's people in Britain who say, oh, there's no class system anymore in Britain. There's no class system, you know?
Yeah. And I'm sure I've seen somewhere where British people say that class system doesn't exist in America, which I don't know how they can determine
they
that.
think that because
it's based on like the
nobility, the monarchy, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Right.
But I would say...
And in Australia, too, they say, oh, there's no class system over there, you know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I personally think that there definitely is a class system in this country. I mean, you kind of hear about the middle class all the time. Middle class.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you hear people talking about the middle class in America.
That middle class.
You don't really hear people talking much about the upper class, the
upper echelons of society.
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean, there's nothing really to kind of like compare it to, you know, because in Britain it's like the upper class are the people who are like aspiring to be royalty.
Or like what's the upper class in America? What determines whether you're in the upper class?
Is it old money? Is it new money?
I would say it's old money. So I would say that depending on where you live in this country, on the East Coast, in the original colonies.
Yeah.
The upper class exists more than anywhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that maybe people who live like in Beverly Hills might consider themselves upper class.
And everybody else thinks, oh,
yeah,
no, they're not upper class, you're trashy or whatever, you know.
I think people who are able to send their kids to Ivy League schools.
Yeah.
Are like upper class.
I'd say they're upper middle class.
So like, okay, let's go to television here for an example.
Televisual feasts.
The Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
The Gilmore family. Not Lorelai so much, but just her family, because they come from old money. Old money in this country, meaning families that descend from the founders of this country, basically. You know what I mean?
Did they? They had some kind of connection. I mean, I know he went to Yale. Or was it Harvard he went to?
I think he went to Yale. He taught at Harvard when Rory went to Harvard.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Henry.
Mr. Gilmore.
Henry Gilmore or something, I think his name wasn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Emily was the mother, and she always had, like, the social
they're part of
pretensions,
society.
and they're part of society, and everything's got to be just so, you know?
So if you live, like, in the East Coast, in New England, even in, like, the deep South, like Georgia or South Carolina, you know?
Yeah.
I think some of these old, and I'm saying old money in quotation marks.
Old money.
I think some of these old money families exist more so over there.
Yeah.
They would consider themselves to be upper class, and I think people in their area would consider them to be part of the upper class also. Now, in the rest of America, we don't know who the hell those people are.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
because there's white collar and blue collar over here, isn't it?
Yeah. Blue collar obviously is the
factories.
Yeah, fast food.
Yeah.
Retail. I think they consider retail and fast food blue collar.
I'm
not really sure.
Because I mean,
actually,
because it's kind of like arguably that people in lower paid office jobs are working class.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about doctors? Are they white collar?
It depends. It depends on the pay bracket, I guess.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, white collar jobs are like,
if you're a surgeon, then no. You're middle class. You're upper middle class. I know
surgeons make a lot of money, though.
Yeah, so they could be upper middle class or middle class at least.
But white collar, I generally think of as like lawyers,
That's middle class.
Stockbrokers, bankers, you know, all these people who wear suits in New York City, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
well,
like
yeah.
white collar jobs, you know, investors, like, but then, yeah, I don't know. It's really difficult.
It's really difficult to classify them.
Yeah. Because, like, okay, where does a realtor come in? Are they working class? Are they blue collar? I think they're middle class. Right?
Bloody yobs is what they are.
I guess why you hear so much about the middle class is because probably a good majority of Americans are middle class. Or at least consider themselves to be. At
least so, yeah.
You know, you were mentioning before about Bernie Sanders and how he was always going on about the 1%, the 1%, the 1%, the 1%. Obviously, I guess
that's
those are the upper
the
class.
Rich people. The people who are super rich.
All these people with their McMansions and their jets and their...
The McMansion.
You know... tons of cars and spending, you know, thousands of dollars on a pair of shoes or a handbag. It's like, are they upper class? I don't know. You know,
yeah.
Like
it's I mean, you can't really like put them in a box, really, can you? You know, it's like someone who lived in a trailer park and was very trashy in lifestyle, you know.
Trashy in quotation
marks.
Yeah.
As someone would think. Mm-hmm. And they suddenly won the lottery and they've got like $20 million now.
Yeah.
And they've moved into the McMansion, but they still live like they used to. They're, vulgar spending, you know, so consumerist, buying all the trashy stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like... Is that classy? Is that upper class? Is that what, you know, what's that going to be, you know?
Yeah.
What bracket are they in?
Or no, here's a bigger question for you. What about somebody who's made a absolute fortune?
Yeah.
In, like, I don't know, ranching.
Ranching or...
They're quite a classy person, like, as far as, you know, they carry themselves.
Yeah.
They're quite classy and, like... You know, they're very respectful. They maybe have good speech. They know big words. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't have, like, they don't spend really vulgarly, but they have a really big house, a big, nice house and stuff. But then they drive, like, a truck and they wear, like... boots and jeans and a cowboy hat. Are they upper class?
Yeah. I mean, there's all these factors that you have to consider.
Yeah, it is difficult to...
I mean, upper class and upper middle class, you know, they had the benefit of a classical education or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Well-spoken and everything, you know.
Yeah. It is difficult to determine in this country, but I think generally, if you're just asking... just anybody, they would say the upper class are the people with the money.
Yeah.
The middle class are the people who are getting by. You know, they're comfortable. They don't have, like, they can't go on loads of vacations and stuff like that. But, you know, they're making a living and they're fine, you know. And then the lower class are the people who are really struggling.
Yeah. Struggling or absolutely poor.
Or not getting by at all. I mean... Is the lower... That's another question. I personally have, like, are you in the lower class if you are completely poor or, like, homeless? Are you still considered the lower class? Same as someone who maybe is, like, a big family living in, like, a one-bedroom house and just barely able to pay the bills. Maybe sometimes they can't quite pay the bills. Are they both in the same category? You know, I don't know. I mean, let's talk about Britain then.
Well, I mean, there you go. To simplify it, the history, to simplify the history is like if you were born into the aristocracy or nobility, you were upper class.
Right.
That's it. You know, it doesn't matter if you didn't have 2 farthings to rub to your name. As long as you had a title, you were Lord Snooty.
And if you weren't in the upper class, you were just in the lower class?
If you were born into anything else, you were basically a peasant. This is like the very beginnings of, like, you know.
Because, you know, some people in America don't believe that middle class is a thing either. They think that there's either you're just poor or you're just rich, and that's it.
That evolved during the 19th century, I think. You know, when Britain started to kind of gain a foothold in the Industrial Revolution and everything. And so the classes became easier to define. You know, like the working classes were the ones down the mines.
Yeah.
The ones in the factories, the ones at the shipyards, the ones blood, sweat and tears, toiling every day, you know, living on bread and margarine and all this kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
They were working class, and the gentry and the upper class were like, you know, people who aspired to be the earls and the dukes and the countesses.
So was working class middle class, or was that a separate, or was that before? There was no kind of middle class at that time, really.
Yeah. It was just, you were either upper class or you were working class.
Because I'm thinking
that kind of the middle class evolved in like the early 20th century, I think, you know, with like office positions and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I'm thinking back, like when I was little and used to watch Roseanne, the television show Roseanne. You know, now it's back on with the Connors, but I'm pretty sure that they used to consider themselves working class. I'm sure that they used to mention that all the time, and I don't know that that's ever been a thing that we say in this country,
well,
but obviously maybe in certain parts of the country.
Yeah, maybe up there in like, you know, like Michigan and all that, you know, and those kind of areas, you know, where there was a heavy like industry and factories and stuff. Yeah. It was the people who owned the factories were middle class.
Okay. Oh, you think they would be middle class, the ones who own the factories?
Middle to upper. Yeah, because I mean, I've got the informal ranks of them here.
Okay.
And I mean, but you know, like the most notable examples of like the class system being displayed is like the Titanic.
Okay, yeah.
You know, like you've got the first classes with all their finery and la-di-da and rich people. Yeah. And then you've got the steerage class, you know?
Yeah.
But somewhere in the middle, there's someone who's, you know, between that. And they're kind of looked down upon by both sides, you know, which is the middle class. Yeah. Really, you know, like a working class go, you know, and the upper class go, you know, so it's just like you're just in the middle, you know. Yeah. And there's a picture that was taken in 1937 that displays it pretty well. It's called The Toffs and the Tuffs. It's like these two Harrovian boys.
What is Harrovian?
They went to Harrow, a public school. They went to Eton or Harrow.
Okay.
Public school. And then there's like these three kids who are kind of like in like poor clothes, and you know, they were kind of like working class. They look working class kids.
Just everyday
and they're
clothes.
Just looking at them, and then they're in their like Harrow finery with the top hats, the tails and everything, you know. And you know, it's just one of those pictures that it was taken outside of Lord's Cricket Ground by a photographer who was like, oh, this is great because it looks like, you know, like the poor people and the rich people, you know, mingling.
And this picture is from when?
1937, so it was pre-war. And you know, but I read up on the stories of them. You can go read up on the stories of them. It's of all the kids in this picture, because you know, it became so famous. I think Life magazine took it and ran with it, and they thought they were from Eton and all this kind of stuff. They didn't really know. They were just like, oh, it's curious. Yeah. British class system, you know. But it's become a synonym for that. You know, this photo. You know, like, oh yeah, the Toffs and the Tuffs. Yeah, it's called, you know. Toff being an upper class person and Tuff being like working class kid, street kid, you know. Yeah. But the informal ranks of them, the upper class is the highest, and it's a very small percentage. You know, like Bernie Sanders keeps going on about the 1%, 1%. Yeah, it's like the 1% is, you know, the richest people. You know, yeah,
like the ones who live in New York City and Los Angeles, basically.
Yeah, and the ones, well, I mean, nobody really has a title over here, do they? You know, really?
No. I mean, not unless they've come from Britain or Europe.
The peerage, gentry, and hereditary landowners, they're the ones who make up the upper class, and basically anyone born into the royal family automatically qualifies. You know, even the lesser ones, you know, like Princess Eugenie and all them, you know, it's like you don't see them so much, but, you know, they're part of the royal family, so they're instantly upper class. Yeah. Then there's upper middle class, and they're kind of confused, like with a lot of people, like the lower classes, like me, I'd consider myself lower class, obviously. They look at them and you see, like, if you were born into a family with a high income and possibly have ancestry that links you to the upper class, you qualify as upper middle class.
Yeah.
And an example of that is if you were educated at Harrow or Eton.
Oh, yeah.
Or one of those schools, and you do well in, like...
you speak with a posh accent.
Speak with a posh accent, yeah.
Yeah.
An example is Boris Johnson. He's definitely one of them. David Cameron, any of the Tory party, that are the Conservative Party of Britain...
Yeah.
...are pretty much guaranteed to be upper middle class.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the middle class, and it's basically that's covered by if you went to college or university and hold a job in, like, accounting, lawyering, civil service, you're basically middle class.
Yeah.
And that's what you are, And I mean, I can't really think of an example of anyone who is middle class. I think because there's so many people, they make fun of it in Britain, like people like from The Good Life. She was their neighbour.
Yeah, I don't know.
You remember, you watched A Good Life. Margot, her name was, and she was all like, "Oh yes, she spoke with a posh accent."
Oh,
yeah. And Tom and Barbara were pretty much working class people, but they'd gone self-sufficient and all that, and But it was like, oh yes, she was very, like, she had aspirations to the upper class, but she was just really middle class.
Yeah.
She lived in the suburbs,
What about that show, what is it called, where the wife calls herself Bouquet, and they're really the buckets?
That's lower middle class.
But she's pretending to be upper class.
If you live in a suburb, run a small business, or work in local government or an office, it's likely you qualify as lower middle class.
Oh, yeah.
Hyacinth Bucket was definitely one of those lower middle class people. She lived in the suburbs, but she thought she was middle class. And she used to say it. She was, "We are middle class. We don't do that," or something, didn't she? She didn't actually say we're upper class, because upper class people hold titles and, royalty and everything, and they obviously couldn't say that, but they were, "We are middle class, we do not associate with the working classes." And I think her sister was very working class, even probably poor.
Yeah.
Poorer than working class, so it was like she was always trying to, like, oh no dear, it's Bouquet, not Bucket,
Yeah.
Because her husband was Bucket, and he didn't care,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty good show to, like, make fun of it.
To make fun of the class system.
Make fun of the class system, yeah. Working class is basically if you're a tradesman, self-employed, or working a skilled industrial job, then you're working class, blue collar.
Yeah.
And there's various, like, people who are skilled, like the white van man, who's a tradesman, usually like a plasterer or a builder or a decorator or something.
Okay, yeah.
And then there's, like, the unskilled, which just basically do work in, like, retail and fast food and stuff like that. Right. They're unskilled working class, people.
Yeah.
And then the total bottom of the rung, is the the lowest class is the underclass.
Underclass, jeez.
Which is people who are chronically unemployable or unemployed, basically criminals, people who like to work, who don't want to work and just think, "Oh, I'll just go rob."
Yeah.
And I'll just do deals, and, drug dealers, any kind of, like, career criminal is the underclass.
Right, okay, yeah.
They're not really on the they're
politicians.
That's it, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, you think about that, it's like, oh yeah, the upper class can be also the underclass too,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, politicians, work shy and,
But does Britain still acknowledge that there's a class system?
The media likes to,
yeah,
when it suits it.
Right.
Because it's controversial now. Because there's some people who go, "Oh, well, I consider myself working class," and and they're proud of it, Yeah. I'm proud to be working class because I'm, because, I mean, at the end of the day, back in the early days of it, it was all about accent. It's like if you spoke posh, you were posh. If you spoke common, you were common.
Yeah.
And there was this like a handbook that was like you and non-you, which you was like upper class and non-you was like non-upper class, and how to spot it.
How to spot it?
You know, like if someone had a posh accent, but they said something like the sweet when they meant like dessert, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, they're not actually they weren't born into upper classes, you know.
Yeah.
It was kind of like it was different words, you know, which goes with.
I've heard posh people say sweeties. Would you like some sweeties?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's all jumbled up today because the world's changed, you know. But back then, it would be like someone was like at one of those charity balls or something, and someone goes, "Oh, this is the Duchess of Cambridge," you know.
Right.
And she's upper middle class.
She's upper middle class?
Yeah, she's upper middle class because she's not upper class because she was not born into nobility or anything like that. She's married into upper class.
Yeah, I guess I remember seeing that. Yeah,
she's upper
when they were going to get married.
Yes, the upper middle class, you know.
Yeah. Oh.
She had a lot of, her family had money.
They're millionaires, I think.
I think, you know. I mean, you know, he's not going to settle for anything less, is he? Really? But it's like, yeah, that's what it is, you know. It's like, you know, someone would she'd come to a ball and she'd say a wrong word and they'd know then.
Yeah.
We don't say that.
Yeah.
She's not one of ours. She's not one of ours. She's not blue-blooded.
So I wonder obviously Meghan Markle's not considered upper class. She's American in the first place.
And again, you know, people mistake that as racism, I think, because I mean, obviously there's racist people out there who are going to be like, ooh, you know, but it's like there's people who just don't like her simply because she's not gentrified,
right? And that's exactly the point that I was kind of making in the beginning. You know, sometimes people, you know, when there's snobbery against someone who might happen to be of brown skin in this country, it's very possible, and I know that there will be people listening who will say, no, it's not possible. It's because of their brown skin. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is purely because, they work in McDonald's, you know.
They work in McDonald's, they have they have a menial job, and, you know, they don't make much money, and, their manners they're uncouth.
Right. People treat people like that because they're working in fast food or because they're delivering my package or, you know what I mean? Like there are people in certain professions that don't get respect simply because of that. There are people who live in certain neighborhoods that don't get respect just because of that. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with the color of their skin. I don't think all the time.
No, not all the time. No. And I mean, it's not an excuse for racism. It's just a case of like some people are just snobs.
Yeah.
Some people are snobs, you know, and I mean, and
we're not saying it either that it's okay to be a snob because it's disgusting. To look down on anybody because of what they do for a living or because, you know, a little
bit of self-respect, you know, because usually the people who are looking down on people, they're not doing anything themselves. So it's like, you know, you're not someone to be looked up to in the first place.
Yes. You know? Oh.
Yeah, you know.
That's very good. That's very good. No, it's true. That's
but it's like, you know, it's like
true.
that's the thing, you know, that's why there was republicanism in the UK against the royal family. It's like, we're not looking up to this family. They're getting everything paid for them. And, you know, Charles is divorcing Diana. This is like very early 90s, you know, this is when it was at its height. And, you know, there's still people who believe that. You know, my dad believes that, you know. It's like, you know, they're not people to look up to. Yeah. You know? Mm-hmm. I mean, and never really were, you know, at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are people who think the same thing about people who have rightfully earned every dollar that they have, but who just kind of
self-made
hoard
man.
That money and spend it on just, you know, 3- and 4-story McMansions and billions of
the
cars.
middle class look down on them.
That they can never drive, and, private jets and all of this kind of thing, rather than, no, it's fine to have all of those things if you've earned it, but you can also use your good fortune to give back to other people. You know what I mean? And you should. Yes.
No, I mean, the whole vulgar spending is what the middle class deem it. And the upper classes do as well, because we never discuss money.
Yeah.
Mainly because we don't have it, but we don't want anyone else to know that we don't have it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, the middle class, they have money and they use it to invest and stuff, and they buy modest homes and stuff, and everything's, done that way. So when someone, is going around going, yeah, I'm part of the upper class and I'm so rich and I'm a very important person.
Yeah.
And they're spending money on like TVs and houses and McMansions, as you said, it's looked down upon, that is.
Yeah.
It's vulgar. Vulgar spending,
Which is basically what any celebrity or
any celebrity is doing that.
Head of any big corporation or big companies in this country, they all do it. They all do the same thing,
Yeah, they do.
And it is disgusting, really. I mean, I'm sorry if you're listening from your McMansion, but but if you're not contributing, giving back to the world, then I think it is pretty disgusting, really.
Yes, very disgusting.
But yeah, I think that there's just a fascination with the class system in Britain, particularly because of things like Downton Abbey,
upstairs, downstairs kind of thing. Yeah, that kind of thing. Again, Downton Abbey's another example of it being portrayed on screen. The upper class upstairs and downstairs class. And, the head butler who aspired, to be, oh, yes, I'm very important. And
he's looked up to amongst the rest of the downstairs.
Yes, he's looked up to amongst the rest of the downstairs because, he's head butler or whatever,
He speaks fancy.
And he speaks fancy, and yes, everything's lovely. And, head valet or head butler, and, the king is coming, and, and all that kind of stuff. The film was pretty good.
The film was pretty good, by the way.
The film was pretty good for that kind of thing, the Downton Abbey film that they released, because it showed the ultimate, the king is coming, and, and everybody's got to, do that kind of thing, But, yes.
I mean, I think that's it in a nutshell.
That's it in a nutshell, yeah.
I mean, we could expand upon it, but, these podcasts are not very long.
They're not very long because, you're listening to this on your lunch break, you're listening to this. You don't want to be sitting here listening to us droning on for over an hour about the class system and everything.
Yes, and because we don't operate from scripts, sometimes I find myself just, rambling. So I think...
Or rambling, or we're just sitting there like a... dead air, just like that. Okay, no, but I mean,
that's the point of this podcast, isn't it? We're just having a chat, so it happens organically. And sometimes when you're just having a chat,
things come up. You know?
And sometimes you find
yourself like the Downton Abbey film. I just was like, oh yeah, the Downton Abbey film was pretty good, wasn't it?
Pretty good, wasn't it?
If you haven't seen it, go see it. It was released last year.
But
pre-COVID times.
But sometimes you find yourself just talking, and then you're like, what am I talking about? What am I even saying? I'm just kind of rambling. And, when we end this, I could sometimes say to Dominic, oh, you might want to edit some of that out, because I feel like I was just talking and I don't even know what my point was, or I wasn't expressing myself clearly or whatever. And I think he just leaves it in most of the time because
it's talking.
It's organic.
It's organic, yeah.
It's
not scripted. And I think if we were scripted, we wouldn't be very funny.
Well, it wouldn't be interesting.
Yeah,
We'd probably put you to sleep if we were just sitting here reading from a script.
Listening to the British class system and speaking quietly into the microphone like this,
I mean, I know that I used to like to listen to morning shows, like when I was driving to school and
because
stuff.
They were lively and they were talking and people were like,
talking about things.
Just talking. Yeah.
And I don't even know if morning shows on the radio exist anymore because people don't really listen to the radio that much anymore. But I miss morning shows.
They don't in the US anyway. I don't think they really do.
I miss just chat shows. I really used to like to listen to that. In the mornings more so. I mean, usually in the afternoon and evening, it's like music. Sometimes on like the drive home at the, rush hour time, there'd be some shows that, you might find a discussion on. But anyway, again, see, I'm rambling.
We're rambling. We'll have to edit all this out now. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Yeah, we appreciate your support, as always, tuning in. We really appreciate that. So,
yes.
Thank you, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.